Alright, Shalom, Shalom. It's your brother Issachar coming back at you with another lesson. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba Hashem, Bakrak Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect and the 144,000 scattered across the four corners of the earth. Shalom to you. Alright, in today's lesson, we're going to go into the simplicity of our enemies. Alright, the simplicity of these simple ones out here. Okay, so in today's lesson, we're going to hit go into these scriptures to show you Akim and Aqua out there. The simplicity of the non-believers. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1 on down. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. Verse 2, to know wisdom and instruction. So let's stop right there, okay? To know wisdom and instruction. There it is. Alright. Remember, we went into that lesson. I went into that lesson recently about the importance of obeying the voice of the Lord. Alright? To know wisdom and instruction. Okay, so to know wisdom and instruction. Alright, so what is our wisdom? Yahweh Shai. Okay? And instruction. Alright, very important. And instruction to perceive the words of understanding. Okay? To receive the instruction, verse 3, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity. Verse 4, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. Verse 5, a wise man will hear and will increase learning. Right, because if you're wise, you're going to take heed to the Lord's words. That's a wise thing to do. This is the best information on the planet Earth right here. Alright, I believe it was Teddy Roosevelt. One of those presidents said that a thorough knowledge of the Bible is better than a college education. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 4. To give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. Verse 5. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. Wise counsels, not simple counsels. IUIC, Genesis, because something that's important out there is you guys got to research. Okay, research what who you're following. All right, so this is why, starting with the apostles, GMS on down, the elders on, and Akim on down. All right, this is why we encourage to look up words. Check out what we're saying is true. See if what the information that the Spirit of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai is giving you is on point, is correct. See? Because don't just take our word for it. Do your own research. All right, and the things that the things that the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai is telling you, okay, through his prophets, all right, this is very important. You have to, know what you're following, unless you're just following blindly, all right, so, it's like when you drive a car, when you drive a car, all right, you get in the morning, sometimes it's a little cold, so you can't see out the window. So what do? When you're about to get in your vehicle, it's first thing in the morning, you're about to go to work and it's cold. All right, you hit the defrost button. Okay, you can defrost it, or you can get a towel or whatever. Try to wipe it down. Try to wipe the windows down if it's all like icy, depending on how cold it is. All right. So why do people? It's an example. Why do people put on the defrost button? Okay, or kind of clear up the window. Why? Why they do that? Okay. Why they do that? Because they can see. So they can see what? The road, right? Because they're about to drive an automobile. All right. So this is for they can see. They can see. They can see where they're going. All right. It's just they're not doing it. All right. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not doing it to. They're not doing it just because. Okay. Why are they wiping down the the front windshield? Why might that be? It's because they can't see, right? So when people, when it rains, okay, for instance, when it rains, all right, you put on the windshield wipers, right? Right. For what? So you can see, because the water is, hitting the window, right? All right then. So you want to, see where you're going, huh? So that's the same thing in this truth, in this walk. Okay. All right. Because the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai will guide you. It's a spiritual thing. So you can't be lazy in this thing. All right. You gotta do your own research. Okay. Check it out. All right. This is why we encourage that. The things that we're teaching. We're never out here. Telling the believers, don't ask us no questions because, we're the prophets and that's that. Nah. Okay. Ask us. And then too, check the things out that we're saying. All right. Check it out, and see if it adds up. All right. So another main point before I continue. All right, it's on my spirit right now. All right. The point of that is because you will develop a more faith. Okay, you'll be more grounded. All right, because you yourself, okay, okay, you're gonna be more grounded. Why? Because you did your own research. All right, this is why the true teachers of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, okay, we prophesy, edify, teach. Okay, so prophesy because we're telling you what's gonna happen before it happens. It's a warning, blowing that trumpet, that alarm. Okay, edify, because to build you up. All right, so on that part, when we are teaching these breakdowns and going into these things, all right, a way for you Akim and Akwat out there to build yourselves up, is to read, check out things for yourself, check out things for yourself, go into what we're saying, check it out, because that develops a strong foundation with the Lord, okay? Because and you're doing your own research, so that helps, that helps, that helps convince you, you see, because you're gonna know and you're gonna be built up in due time. All right, because when you do your own research and you check out things for yourself, okay, that it builds you up. All right, it builds you up. All right, so let's continue in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 6. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, okay, so we got to understand these things. All right, with all that knowledge, get understanding, okay? Because if you don't understand what time we're in, okay, if you don't understand what you're following, okay, if you're just following blindly, okay, you're not gonna understand it, because you're just being a parrot, you're just repeating what the other person said, and you're just going with the flow, So there it is right there. Okay, so that's a better word right there. When you do your own work, okay, when you do your own research, that gives you a better understanding. Okay, it gives you a better understanding. You see, because you're gonna understand what it is. All right, and the Lord's gonna give you, your trials, and there's things in the spirit that is gonna trim your lamps. Okay, patience. There's a lot. All right, Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 6. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, okay, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. So why is it a dark saying? Okay, why is it a dark saying? Because you can't read the Bible and just know what it's talking about. Okay, the Lord's very poetic. Okay, the Lord speaks in parables. All right, you gotta know that. This is why 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 50 on down. It's behold, I show you a mystery. Okay, because it's a mystery. You gotta know that. All right, because it's not for everybody. All right, Romans chapter 11, verse 7. All right, the elect have attained it, and the rest were blinded. Okay, remember that. All right, because the elect can get it, receive it, but the rest are blind. You see? All right. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord, Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai, is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay? So, the fear of the Lord. All right, remember how, that lesson understanding the importance of obeying the voice of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Okay, you gotta fear the Lord. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're out here, just walking around, looking like a scaredy cat. No, it's just that you gotta fear what what the Lord's gonna do unto you, rather than man. Okay, rather than man. All right, so by that fear, you're gonna get yourself right. Okay, you're gonna make adjustments. Okay, because if you truly care about the Lord and you fear the Lord, you're going to your actions are going to you're going to fear. You're gonna make the adjustments. Okay, you're gonna improve things. You're gonna do what you have to get right with the Lord. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7. The fear of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay, so fools despise wisdom and instruction. Verse 7. My son, hear the instruction. Okay, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. All right, so we're gonna skip down a little bit. Okay, let's see here. Bear with me. Okay, Proverbs chapter 1 verse 20 on down. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the street. Okay, so that is where the you're gonna get the true message of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Okay, on the highways and byways. All right, wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the street. Okay, so that's where this message is being taught. All right, you also have the platforms, okay, on YouTube. All right, it's going around the World Wide Web. All right. Verse 21. She cried in the chief place of concourse. Okay, and the openings of the gates. In the city she uttered her words, saying, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? There it is. Okay, so that's Lord willing, what I'm gonna title this lesson. Okay, the simple, the simplicity of our enemies. Okay, the wicked. See? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. See? Turn you at my verse 23. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. All right. So there it is right there. Let me read it one more time, okay? Proverbs chapter 1 verse 23. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. Okay, so this is spirit. Okay, this is a spiritual thing. All right, because if you're part of the hopeful elect, the spirit is gonna guide you to where you gotta go. All right. I will pour out my spirit unto you. Listen up, this is very important, okay? So this is what a lot of people are not doing, they're not following. Okay? I will make known my words unto you. So this is why the famine of the word's coming. Okay? This is why the famine of the word's coming. Okay? Why is famine the word coming? Because the true prophets are out here. Okay, telling the world, what it is. See that? So right here, I will make known my words unto you. So this is why now our enemies know, like, oh shit, is that what it means? Like, yeah, it means slavery for the heathens and slavery for the Edomites. Okay? Oh yeah, So it says, I will make known my words unto you. So, why is the Bible all of a sudden? Why is the Bible? Why is it all of a sudden a problem? Okay, because the true prophets are back on the scene. Okay, telling the world what it is. Okay, telling the world what it is. See? So I will make known my words unto you, because now it's being known who the children of Israel are. The facts are coming out. See? Yeah. And hey, you gotta remember that to our enemies out there. Hey, the jig's up. The cat's out the bag. All right. Remember that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens between now and Yahweh's return. Okay. Israel got next. Okay. The elect are going to go first, and the 2/3 are going to inherit the kingdom. But when the elect have children, all right. So remember when Yahweh went on the cross, all right. He said, "What? It is done. It's finished." Okay, because that was it right there. All right. We're just waiting for prophecy to fulfill. We're waiting for these prophecies. See? So right there, I will make known my words unto you. All right. So this is why this word is so much of a problem to the New World Order. Okay. It's a problem to Esau's kingdom. All right. Why is it? Because it's exposing him. Okay. It is. They can't. They can't. Lie no more. Because everything's being exposed. All right. Verse 24. Listen up. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 24. Because I have called and ye refused. Okay. So, how is the Lord calling the elect? By the word. Okay, by the word. Okay, not some fancy garment. And you gotta have your own podcast and the clout and all that. No, okay. The Lord is gathering His elect by the word. Just by the word. That's it. Okay. All right. Because I have verse 24. Proverbs 1:24, because I have called and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded. Right, okay? No man regarded, because, all right, yeah, because when we're out there teaching on the highways and byways, yeah, you might have, a few people, they might know that they're Israelite. But, they might say, if they're not a scoffer, hey, they might say, God bless you, something like that, but they don't know Yahweh Bashim Shai, okay? And, a lot of times those people, they're just, because they hear us teaching the scriptures in the Bible, but they're not, they're not trying to learn about the truth, they'll tell you, oh, God bless you, but, they don't know Yahweh Bashim Shai. See? And neither do they care. They don't care either, because, if people cared, they would be listening. Okay? They would be trying to see what they have to do. Okay? They would be listening to the word, to see all right, you know, uh, how can I get right? You know, what do I gotta do? You know, see, you know, it's just like if somebody, you know, wanted a house. Okay, for example, if somebody just wanted a house, you know, or a car, what would they do? Okay, what would they do? All right, they would they would do what? They would start researching, right? All right, you know, how do people get a house? You know, maybe start talking to family, friends, neighbors, you know, people, because if somebody wanted to buy a house and they had no idea, what are the things that they would start doing? What are the steps? What are the measures? Because if they truly wanted a house, okay, or you know, a car, whatever, all right, let's just go with a house, you know, for that. So if somebody wanted a house and they never bought a house before, what are they going to do? Okay, they're going to start going on the internet, you know, seeing what they got to do, you know, maybe talk to their maybe family, you know, neighbors, co-workers, saying, hey, you know, how'd you get your house, you know, they're going to start asking questions, you know, but they're going to be into it, you know, because no one's just going to ask and just, all right, well, whatever, you know, so because they're truly going to do their own research, you know, they're really going to call that real estate agent, you know, they're really going to see, how do I got to get a house, you know, see that? So that's how we are the hopeful elect, okay, because we want to be saved, okay, we are hoping for mercy from Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, you know, that's what we look for, okay, how would America, you know, how would this world, okay, it's finished, you know, this kingdom is through, all right, so when somebody wants a house and they're serious about it, they're gonna start watching, you know, maybe videos, whatever, asking questions, you know what I'm saying, all right, but they're not just gonna be like, oh, whatever, you know, just gonna hear it however, no, they're truly gonna listen, you know, they might not know it all the way, but they're really going to listen, okay, they're really going to research, you know, because why? Because they want that house. Same thing, okay, with the hopeful elect, because if you're the hopeful elect, it's just like somebody here in Babylon, America. Let's just do that for an example, okay? If you want to get a house, you're truly, your actions are going to show, because you're going to start working on your credit, okay? You're going to, you know, you're going to start asking questions. You're going to start checking out real estate agents or whatever. Start seeing what houses you got to get. See that? So you're going to start putting in work. You're going to start actually making effort. See that? Because you truly want that house, right? Okay? Because you truly want that house, right? Okay, so that is how it's going to be, you know, those are the hopeful elect, okay? Because you're, you know, you might have good weeks, bad weeks, but you're actually going to try, okay? You know, your actions, okay? You know, because you're truly going to be sincere. You're going to be humble. If you make a mistake, you're going to say, Salakia, you know? You're gonna feel bad about it, not just, oh, never admit to anything like Nate, you know, just all proud and puffed up, never admit to anything, you see, all right, you know, so, you know, you're gonna start trimming your lamp, you know, you're gonna start making efforts to make things right. All right, to make things right with the Lord. See? All right. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 25. But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and with none of my reproof. Okay? I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. So this is the Lord. Okay? Yeah. Okay, this is the Lord saying that He's gonna laugh at our enemy's calamity. And how is the Lord gonna be laughing? Is the Lord going to, is Yahweh Shemel Shai going to show His face in the sky? You know? No, the Lord's gonna laugh through His men. Okay? All right? Yeah. I also will laugh at your calamity. This is the Lord, okay? So, you know, our enemies, Esau, Edom, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, you know, Illuminati, Trump, all these clowns think that, oh yeah, they think that they're so, perfect and stuff. You know, this is what they think, they mock, the men of the Lord, and they make things about our Lord, Yahushai, So when the Lord starts bringing these judgments, which He is, okay, the men of the Lord are going to be laughing, but it's the Lord laughing through His men, okay? Proverbs chapter 1, verse 26. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. Right. How we just read verse 24 and 25. Okay? Because no man regardeth. Okay? No man regardeth. Alright? Because once again, when we're out there teaching, okay, something that you gotta understand is that when people say, oh yeah, God bless you, they're just saying that, but do they truly want to know about, the truth? Do they care about salvation? Alright, do they care about pleasing the Lord? See that, because they may say, oh, God bless you, but they're not showing anything, any questions. Kind of like somebody who wanted to buy that house, because they're not asking any questions to what I gotta do, what I need cut off, what's the name of the Lord? See, because people are not being sincere, because they're saying, oh, just trying to be, just nice, just kind of like saying, have a good day, that's what they're doing. They're pretty much saying like, oh, God bless you, but they're not, they don't care about the Lord, because, yeah, all right, so, yeah, because they're not saying, what's the name of the Lord? What I gotta do? They're not saying anything, see? So, verse 26. Proverbs 1:26. I also will laugh at your calamity. So you don't think the Lord sees that? Okay? Every time that a scoffer walks by the camp, okay, makes fun of the men of the Lord because we're out there with garments and stuff, remember, so, when you do that, you're laughing at the Lord directly. Alright? So the Lord's saying, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. Alright? I will mock when your fear cometh. So this is what's happening right now. Okay? These Americans, these Babylonians are, they're worried now. Okay? Because of, the gas prices. They can't afford housing. There are a lot of these Edomites, American Babylonians, they're complaining, whining, saying, man, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. They're cutting off my benefits, see, and the spirit, the power of Yahweh Shai, has us, laughing at them, because the same way they mocked us when they burned down Jerusalem, the Edomites, and said, race it, that means burn it, all right, remember how we got to America, okay? We came over here in slave ships, okay? All right, we came over here in slave ships, and cargo slave ships, all right? And it was those small hats that financed the ships, okay? And the first ship that set sail was the good ship Jesus. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so the Lord's right here telling us that He hasn't forgot. He's all right. That He sees He sees everything that our enemies do. So when they laugh, it's oh yeah right. These dudes are crazy, or these dudes are bums, and all that. All these names. Verse 26, Proverbs 1:26. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as a desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you. Okay? So this is the Lord is remember, He's gonna mock the Lord's mocking our enemies, okay, by these plagues, these judgments. See? Verse 28. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but shall not find me. Okay? Alright, so when these things are starting to happen, the draft, stuff like that, okay, famine's going to be major, okay, famine, and the society being shut down, okay, so no more food, water, but the society is going to be shut down. Okay, it's going to be major out here. All right, like cyber attacks, EMPs. Okay, that's going to completely just cripple America. It's a matter of hours, because this whole society is ran off energy. Okay, it's all ran off energy. You see? All right, so okay, here we go. Here's another beautiful point. Okay, Proverbs chapter 1 verse 28, right here. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. Wait a minute. Slow down, slow your horses. Slow it down, baby. Okay. So, right here, okay, this is another cut to the wacky-tacky Christians, all right? Because right here, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 28, the Lord's saying He's going to mock when their fear cometh. He says He's going to laugh. He says, verse 26, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh, right? Back to verse 28, okay? Look. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. Right, okay? So the Lord's saying, those that, mock, scoff, that don't believe, when these times come, these hard times, then people are gonna look at God and say, God, they don't know Yahweh's name, but they're gonna say, oh God, just please help me, help me and my family. We have no food. Please help us. See that? Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. See? Okay? So, one more time. Proverbs 1:28. Alright? Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. What? So, the Lord straight up telling us that in the time of death, in the time of calamities, when people are, in fear, okay, they're gonna call on the Lord, but the Lord says, I'm not gonna answer them. But wait a minute, okay? I thought the Wacky Christian said that, God loves everybody, okay? All right, how come the Lord's not telling us in the 28th verse that, hey, okay, that even those who scoff, those who regard this word, when they call upon me in these last times, I'm gonna forgive them. Okay, I'm gonna listen to them. The Lord's not saying that. Okay, the Lord's saying He's gonna mock when their fear comes. All right, Proverbs 1:28. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. See? All right. So the Lord's not gonna answer. To who? Those that don't believe. Okay. So right there, I'll give him aqua. Okay, that is another scripture that cuts that false information out there, that false doctrine that we're all the same and that God loves everybody. Because right here the Lord's saying that, well, in the time of those calamities, those who don't believe, okay, then verse 28, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but shall not find me. See, because right now people, they turn their back to the Lord. Yahweh Bashim outside. Okay? Alright, but that's alright. In these times that we're entering, the Lord's gonna turn his back on them. Alright? The Lord's gonna turn his back on them. See? Alright, so right there is a beautiful point. Okay, because it says the Lord's telling us through Proverbs, okay, that He's not going to answer. Verse 29, for that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. Okay, because remember, people, people, instead of fearing the Lord and instructions, okay, people are going with their own emotions, what they feel is right. Okay, they're doing it. These people out here are they're going what the people say. See, that's a lot of the people's, a lot of cases out here. Okay. Especially here in America, it's these Babylonians are, they got no balls, they got no backbone. Okay, even when it comes down to sports. Okay, let's just talk, sports. Okay, because sometimes when people, when they're sports fans, okay. And there's like another, like let's say somebody's like a Charger fan, and somebody else like a Jaguar fan, and there's more like Jaguar fans. Okay, they won't really say that they're a Charger fan, because like they don't want to displease the people, you see, because they want to keep it all good. All right. So this is it right here. Okay. But especially when it comes down to the Lord, because people they're when they say that they're an Israelite and they start getting treated, start going through trials, it starts getting a little uncomfortable out there. Okay, they're ashamed of the Lord, because they look around and the people are looking at them like, how can you say that? And they're like, oh, you know what? I'm not gonna say that because the room doesn't like me saying it. Fuck the people at the job, fuck the room. All right, so that's what these Americans, a lot of people here, okay, because they're ashamed of the Lord. They're weak, okay, because they'll say, oh, all right, I'm an Israelite. But then when people in the world look at them like, oh, you're one of them, then they kind of, put their head down and like, all right, they bow down. See? This is why the prophets and the elect are like, yeah, we are them. That's right, See? So this is the point here, okay? Because people are ashamed of the Lord. All right? Yeah. Look at Nick Cannon, okay? He knew that he was an Israelite. What happened? The so-called white man looked at him and said, hey, you want that check to keep coming in? You still want that TV show? Cut that shit out. And, all right, See? Because he's ashamed of the Lord. See, why? Because he's scared of the so-called white man for some FRNs, a pink piece of paper. See? A pink piece of paper. Huh? Huh? So that is, yeah, that's very real right there. Very real. Verse 29, for that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, because they hate the Lord. All right? Because they hate knowledge. They hate the word. They hate the Lord. All right? And remember, people in this world, they don't have to say it with their mouth. Their actions show that they hate the Lord. All right? Remember that. Okay? Remember that. All right? Proverbs chapter 1, verse 30. They would none of my counsel. They despise all my reproof. See that? Because they despise the word. They despise the Lord. They are, they hate the Lord. See that? Because they're not, by their actions. All right, verse 31. Therefore shall they eat the fruit of their own way. Okay? And be filled with their own devices. Verse 32, for the turning away of the simple shall slay them. See that? So by people being simple and people being like Lot's wife, okay, they are going to, that's going to slay them, because they're trying to please the people. Okay? They're trying to hold on to this world. Huh? See? Proverbs 1 and 32. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. Nate, okay? Shout out. Huh? See? Okay, the prosperity of fools, okay, shall destroy them. Because Micah 2 and 10, let's get it. All right. Micah chapter 2 verse 10. Arise ye and depart, For this is not your rest. Okay, because right now the wicked are ruling. Okay, this is why you gotta understand what's going on. All right, because our Lord, okay, he already, our Lord Yahushua went on the cross already. Okay, it is done. Okay, it is finished. So, Yahweh Shem Yahushua tells us through his prophet Saint Matthew that remember, you know, that that all things have to be fulfilled. Okay, all things have to be fulfilled. It's prophecy. Micah 2:10. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. See? Yeah, because you guys already know. All right. These celebrities, the files. Hey, you know about the files? Okay. All right, because this is what these celebrities, athletes. This is what they do. Okay, they sacrifice children, they molest them, all that. Okay. All right. Remember, the Lord is gonna arrive soon. So everything is gonna be made known. Okay, everything will be known. All right, there's nothing that the wicked have that they can hide. Nothing. All right. Micah 2:10. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you. See, even with the sword of destruction. Right. Okay. It will destroy us because we follow the Lord. We follow righteousness. See, not wickedness and whatever. We're gonna do whatever we gotta do because we're trying to get the bag and the clout. We're trying to get that Ferrari. And that $5 million house. Nah. Okay. We follow the Lamb. All right. Look at these celebrities. Okay. Yeah, they may have what? I don't know. Let's say they have $7 million. Okay, $7 million. Let's say they have like a $4 million house, and they have like clothing label or whatever. But they're destroyed because they are defiled. Okay, they participate in these holidays. They try to be with this world. Okay, they are with this world. Okay, they are with this world. All right, so they're polluting themselves. Okay, they are defiling themselves before Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Okay, all right. It's very important because they really do that. Okay, and I'm sure you Akim and Akwat out there have heard about it, but you got to understand that. LeBron James. He said the other day, not too long ago, "Oh, I just want to live." Okay, he goes, "Oh, I just want to live." See, so it is, because even these Israelites that sold out, okay, you're not at rest because you sold your soul to Satan. Okay, all right, you sold your soul to Satan. You now have to make sacrifices often. All right, so you have to defile yourself. You have to be part of this world. Okay, Psalms 2 and verse 1 on down. Psalms 2 verse 1 on down. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Question mark. Okay, so why do the heathen rage? Okay, the heathen, the Edomites, and the heathens. Okay, the other 17 nations. Okay, the other 17 nations. Okay, so why the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? So why is the heathens? Why is it what they're thinking about? What they're imagining? Why is it vain? Okay, why is it vain? Because it's gonna come to naught. It's no good. All right, the New World Order. All right, their plans. Yahweh Shem Al Shai is going to do His will. All right. So Psalms 2 verse 1 on down. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Okay. So yeah, right now Esau, he's all butthurt. They're furious. Remember that. Because yeah, they may be they may not understand those ships. Okay. But you got to understand that. You got to understand that you got to understand that they are they're raging because they're upset because there's no kingdom that ever that somebody said, hey, we're gonna take your kingdom down and we're gonna take you out and everything that you love, everything that you built up in your society or your kingdom, you're gonna take it down. There was no kingdom that said, yeah, you know what, we're just gonna give up our kingdom willingly. No. Okay. So these Edomites and heathens, remember, they're furious, because they're in their minds they're like, oh no, they're gonna Esau's gonna go out guns blazing. Okay, remember that. Yeah, our enemies are nothing compared to the angels and Yahweh Shem Al Shai, but right now they are ruling. Okay, they are ruling. Look at Donald Trump's goofy ass. Okay, look at Donald Trump's goofy ass. Okay, he can do whatever he wants around the world, and look at how goofy he is, because they're ruling right now. Okay, all right, see that? Verse 2, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together, and against the Lord, and against His anointed, saying. So the leaders, okay, the leaders, they take counsel together, okay, against the Lord, and against His anointed. Okay, so the leaders are against the Lord once again. All right, the leaders are against the Lord and His believers. All right, this is what they're saying, and they're still doing that to this day. Okay, Psalms 2 and 3. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. So let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Okay, so their cords, their communication. Okay, their communication. With the Lord. Okay, they already beat our nationality out of us. This is why our people don't know that we're Israelites. Okay, they say, oh no, I'm black. I'm Latino. But those are words. You got to understand that the Lord, our enemies, they gave us proverbs and bywords, so you can understand. All right. So our enemies are saying this. Psalms 2 verse 3 on down. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. See that? See, so the cords. who we are as a people, because we were connected to the Lord. All right, by by everything that we did. Okay, we call on His name first and foremost. Okay, His ways. All right, something that you gotta really understand. Okay, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Okay, so how their bands, because if people are together in a band, they're a lot stronger. Okay, so we were together. Okay, we knew who we were. All right, so remember that movie Roots? Okay, remember that movie Roots when they said remember that movie Roots when they said hey, your name's Toby, and he goes, oh no, my name is Kutukente. He goes, no, your name is Toby. So they beat him until submission. See? So they already did that. Something.
The A-line train to Pomona is now arriving.
So this is Psalm chapter 2, verse 3. All right, so this is what our enemies are saying, okay? And they still say that to this day. And I'm gonna let you know why right now. Psalms 2 and 3. Let us break their bands asunder, because when someone's together, they're stronger. Their bands. All right, and cast away their cords from us. All right, so like a power source, okay? Because the Lord is our power. All right, remember the Lord, Yahweh Shem Shai, is our strong tower. The righteous run into it and is safe. Okay, so He's our power. He's our, He's our power source. So like if you ever did like construction or some type of where you had to use a saw to cut wood, or let's say like you needed some power for whatever, you had like a grinder, so you had to connect the extension cord to the generator. Okay, so that extension cord, you can't get power from the cord. It's a way to get to the power, right? Because the extension cord don't have power. It's the generator that generates that power. Okay, so that cord is that instrument used that way you can use your tool, right? Or whatever. Let's say like you wanna it's nighttime and you wanna hook up some lamps. You know what I'm saying? All right, so it's the cords. All right, so this is why they had beat the Indian out of them. Okay, back to our brothers and sisters who are the so-called Native American Indians. All right, the tribe of Gad, Issachar,